Joining us now on the set at the Canadian Science Policy Conference is Geoff Hill. Geoff, you're with Deloitte.
Yes, I am.
Your company recently did a study on the oil sands. Perhaps you can tell us about that.
Well, we have a series of publications that we issue, and the most recent one was called the Innovation Imperative, and that was basically talking about the role of innovation in the oil sands industry, and not only from a historical perspective, but mostly going forward and how important innovation is. We're releasing one tomorrow as well, which we call Gaining the Grounds. We release that every year, and it's basically the top 10 issues for the oil and gas industry. This one is more focused on the future of Canada and the role of the oil and gas industry in that future of Canada.
And when you say this one, you mean the one that's coming out?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
November 7th.
Tell us a little bit about the one that you've already put out there,
Right.
talking about innovation. What did you look at?
Well, we looked at a variety of things. We looked at the definition of innovation and what does that really mean, and then we looked at some key areas that we've noticed that the oil and gas industry has been innovating in, and then our opinion as to which ones of those areas and or other areas that the oil and gas industry really needs to focus on to be a true energy superpower.
Okay. When you look at it, what sort of a grade do we get?
I would say generally we get a fairly good grade. Mm-hmm. I would say the oil and gas industry has a reputation of being innovative, mm-hmm. and that would play out in what we've seen in the last several years. I would say that we're seeing a bit of an evolution in the definition of innovation, though. We are seeing a lot more collaboration than we ever did in the past, as opposed to individual companies working together or working alone. And I don't mean collaboration just fostered by government, but also company-to-company collaboration. Mm-hmm. And it's our opinion that that's really a step in the right direction.
One of the things that in your presentation you mentioned that Canada ranks 14th, and is that in innovation?
Yes. Okay,
ranks 14th. That seems pretty good when you're looking at the world, or are you looking?
I would
at
disagree.
Just you would disagree?
Yes.
Where do you think we should be?
Well, the reason I would disagree is because if you look at the enviable position we have in Canada with a stable economy, stable political system, excellent resources, and if you look at the amount of funding we actually put into R&D from a government standpoint, that would lead us to believe that we should be much higher than 14th.
Okay, so while 14 may not be bad, we should be doing better.
That's right.
Okay, you also grade us as a D. So is that in?
Yeah, and that's not our grading.
Okay.
That was based on another report, but that's right. So we didn't get the greatest rating in Canada, and we haven't in the last few years, as to being an innovative country from the perspective of making the best of our dollars that we invest and what we get out of that innovation. Canada's lagging behind.
Is that a historical trend, or is this something that's just happened over the last, say, decade or last?
Yeah, it's more of a trend that is unfortunately going in the wrong direction. If you just look historically back to government incentives for R&D as an example, Canada was one of, if not the pioneers in that area, and we often had the most generous tax credit incentives. And over the last 5 to 10 years, many other countries have caught up and have surpassed us in that area, and that's manifesting itself into some of those numbers of our ratings.
Mm-hmm. Who do you blame for that? Can you put your finger on any one source?
It's difficult to put your finger on one source. Most recently, the recent federal budget that came out was, in our opinion, a step in the wrong direction. It clawed back some of the incentives for R&D.
Mm-hmm. That's where the money's coming from, though, isn't it?
Most of the with respect to government incentives,
right.
Yes, they're, federally and provincially, but the federal is the lion's share of it. And then there's also company-funded research without government intervention. In other words, companies just funding their own R&D. But there's a few trends in the last little while that probably has set Canada off a little bit in the wrong direction, and it's making a lot of taxpayers very concerned. Most global companies have the choice of where they are going to put their innovation dollars. Mm-hmm. Are they going to put it in Canada? Are they going to put it in the US, in the UK, overseas, whatever the case might be? And a lot of those companies now are seriously looking at Canada not being the most desirable place for innovation, and that concerns me as a Canadian.
Right. You see quite a gap between us and the Americans right now.
From a productivity perspective, which is a different measure, there is a gap between us and the U.S. Yes.
Mm-hmm. How much?
Well, I
Okay.
don't have the numbers, but
Yeah.
but generally,
Substantial.
it's substantial and it's starting to widen, unfortunately.
It just seems from listening to you that we're going in the wrong direction when it comes to business and innovation and moving forward in the future.
Yeah, and that's not entirely correct. You know, if you look at some of our key industries, oil and gas, this is where we are right now. Our oil and gas industry is a dominant industry globally, and we are on the verge. I would say we're not quite there, but we are on the verge of being an energy superpower. There's a lot of challenges that we still have to overcome. There's some major concerns, access to foreign funds, access of our product to the market, pipelines. So there's some major issues we have to get over. But keeping all that aside for a second, we are probably in one of the best situations globally from the resources we have and the demand that the world has on those resources. The question is, are we going to get it right in terms of how to properly get the most value out of those resources? And that's where the dialogue like today, or the dialogue that's in our publications, starts to really get the Canadian thinking. What do we have? What are we sitting on? And what do we need to do to get the most value out of it? Because it's not simple. But if we, definitely the wrong action is doing nothing.
Right. And is that a Canadian tradition?
Well, we're Canadians. So at times I've heard a lot of clients say that, as difficult as it was for us to accept owning the podium, as an example, at the Vancouver Olympics.
Yes.
To own the energy industry is also difficult. I would say, though, that that has changed quite a bit in the last few years, and I think Canadians are, rightly so, very proud of what we have and are starting to flex that muscle, and we should be.
Okay. Geoff, thank you very much for your time. We've been chatting with Geoff Hill with Deloitte, and we'll be talking to another gentleman in just a moment about a study that he has done.